method. All right. So another traditional method, it's called charsa, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
how is it works? It's very simple, right? You can see it's a depiction of this method. Now, you have a structure like this. Again, it's sort of acts as a pulley sort of a structure, right? And then you have a rope that passes, this is your pulley actually, and then you have a rope that passes over this pulley. Now, one end of the rope is tied to the animal, and the other end of the rope is tied to the bucket,
Right.
right? And what happens is that this bucket is inserted in the ground or in the well where the water is, and then the farmer pushes or sort of motivates the animal to move, right? So initially what is happening is that, suppose this
Right.
is your water body, this is your bucket, right? It is coming all the way through this pulley, and then the rope is connected to your let's say this is your animal. Now initially the situation is this: as soon as this animal will move forward, it will bring this bucket up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by definition we say that charsa is a method in which animal power is used, right? So what is the defining feature of charsa? You use animal power, right? So it's animal power, which is also termed as drought power, T-R-A-U-G-H-T, right? When you take the help of animals to draw the water for irrigation purposes, it is called charsa. Does that make sense? And the same limitations that we studied for, for shadoof,
Yep.
that it irrigates a small area and it depends on manual labor. Similarly, this method also inherits the same limitations actually. Again, it will be suitable for which type of farming? For subsistence, right? And even if we sort of dig a bit deeper, we realize that even if it is suitable for subsistence farming, which is done on small scale, then too you cannot grow crops like rice, right? Why you cannot grow crops like rice?
Because it needs a lot of water.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Even if you grow one field of rice, it will still require a lot of water, and that's gonna consume,
Mm-hmm.
that's not gonna be sufficient, right? So this is the second method.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the third method, right? Now this method is called carres, right? It's called carres. Now remember one thing, indicative feature or something, a key point that you need to remember about this method is that it is practiced only in hilly districts, right? It is practiced in hilly districts, right? So, and by hilly districts, I mean, you may consider the areas of the mountains of Balochistan, and the areas where there are mountains or hills, right? So it is practiced in hilly districts, right? It is not practiced in Sindh or Punjab, right? It's not practiced in Sindh and Punjab. And just by the way, it is one of the traditional methods that is taught from one generation to the next in Balochistan. I have met people in Balochistan, uh, who are involved in farming, and they use this method, and it's basically a very, very, you might say it's very, very demanding method because let me
Mhm.
share this with you as a story. So
Right.
The people who live in the villages of Balochistan, like Pasni, right, or or
Yeah.
Khuzdar, right? So people there
Yeah.
gather. They have a system that is called Panchayati system, right? And in that system, the elders of the family gather on maybe like a tea party. They gather, they sit, they discuss because they have the inherited knowledge about the geology. They know where they are going to find which natural resource, right? So they gather, they sit, and they have a sort of a roundtable conference, right? And
Uh-huh.
there they discuss the site. They discuss what? They discuss the site where they assume or where they are sure that they are going to find the water, and then those elders appoint a group, a team, a committee of young people, the teenagers, appoints them, the elders
Yeah.
appoint them and then ask them to dig, to dig vertical shafts. Let me give you an example. So let's say this is your hill, and the seniors are gonna ask the
Yeah.
youth to dig vertical shafts like this, right? And all of the labor is
Right.
done by the young people, and then when the water is obtained using this method, the water is distributed according to the contribution that is made by the individual. So for example, if there is person A, if there is person B, if there is person C, if he has contributed the highest, if he has given a medium amount, and if he has given the smallest amount, the largest water share will be given to this person and the smallest will be given to this person. So the share is
Right.
according to the efforts and the contribution that you have made. And by contribution,
Mm-hmm.
we mean both the knowledge contribution and the and the financial contribution, right? Now, this is how the system works.
Right.
But fortunately or unfortunately, in exam, you are gonna be just the examiner only is gonna give you a sketch diagram or a diagram like this, and he's gonna ask you to label these, right? So he's gonna ask you
Right.
where the water table is. Does that make sense?
Right.
So you
Yeah.
need to remember water table is represented by a dotted line. Are we clear
Mm-hmm.
on this? So this is your
Yep.
water table. And are you able to see this passage that I am marking? Oh, let's I don't think it will work. Are you able to see this part?
Yep. I can see.
Right? So in this part, why have I highlighted this part is because this part is although unlabeled in this diagram, but this is called, I have, let me write it down. This is called a water tunnel. This is called a water tunnel,
Tunnel.
right? So it's just a water tunnel. The water will pass through it. And when this water tunnel, this same tunnel, when this do you guys do you see that it is eventually ending here and it is
Mm-hmm.
emerging up, right? So it
Yeah.
is eventually coming outside the ground, and when this comes outside the ground, it is termed as canal. It is termed as canal. Does that make sense? So it's the
Tunnel.
same passage. As long as this passage is moving underground from here to here, it will be called what? Water table. And as soon as it emerges up the ground, it's gonna be termed as canal, right? And from this canal, the
Right.
water flows to the land. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. Now, as I mentioned you, that you might be able to see that the elders ask their young ones to dig these vertical passages, right? These vertical passages, you might be able to see them here as well, right?
Yep.
So these vertical passages, these vertical passages, these are called maintenance shafts. These are called what? These are your maintenance
Maintenance shaft.
shafts, right? Now, these are made to make sure that the system is working without any problem, right? So, for instance, let me give an example. Consider consider that some stones, get stuck here. Do you think the water will be able to pass and come outside? No, right?
No,
So
no.
you need these canals, people, so that people could dive in and just sort of remove these rocks. Are we clear on this?
Yep.
All right. So this is called carres, right? So in the carres, what you basically do is that you select a foothill, right, which is suggested by the elders, and then you dig a long water tunnel, which ultimately, when comes out of the underground, it is termed as canal, and this canal brings the water up. Vertical shafts are made just for the purpose of maintenance. Are we clear on this?
Yep.
All right. So if I will give you a diagram to label this, will you be able to label this? You need to remember four things: maintenance shaft, water tunnel, water table, and canal. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. We will also be doing its practice of labeling in when we will be doing the past papers of this topic. All right. Okay. So
Yep.
coming back, so what are some of the limitations of this method? Now the first limitation is that, as I mentioned you, that the water which is obtained has to be divided, right? It has to be shared, and of course when sharing comes, not everything is friendly, right? And there might be conflicts, right? So the first limitation is that could be conflicts of interest. So one would say that I need more water, the other would say that I need more water. Of course there is a pre-agreement that the person who contributes more is going to get more water, but it's human nature. Conflicts can occur, so there could be conflict over water share. Second,
Right.
okay, what do you observe about this diagram? Is it in a closed space, or do you think that the sun will be right here? It's an open
Uh,
space,
I think, yeah,
right?
it's an open space.
So when the rays of the sun are gonna hit the shafts, they are gonna pass, the
Mhm.
heat is gonna pass down, and it would cause evaporation, right? Because see, the water is flowing, and if the heat rays is gonna hit them up, the water is gonna evaporate, right?
Right.
And remember this point, that evaporation is a limitation of every irrigation method that is done, um, you know, in an open space, right? And since majority of the
Right.
irrigation methods that we are going to study are done in open spaces, they are subject to heat, to sun rays, therefore they are also subject to a limitation of evaporation. So Achha, just by the way, do you understand what is meant by limitations?
Like restrictions? Like
Excellent.
not
Restrictions.
restrictions, but it's a, oh,
Yes,
restrictions. Okay.
absolutely. Restrictions are problems, right? Similarly, there is another problem. You require regular maintenance, which will definitely involve cost plus
Mm-hmm.
labor.
Yep.
And then if,
And not Pakistani farmers are so rich they afford these
Yes,
crops.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, if you need to reduce evaporation, you need to, you know, sort of, you would be needing trees. So trees
Mhm.
could be grown here, sure, but that, do you think trees can grow in a day or so? No,
Mm,
right? So it's gonna take some
no,
time. All right,
the take is
yes. So do you have any questions so far related to this method?
no, I understand everything until
Okay,
now.
okay, okay. All right. Okay, let's come to this method. Have you studied Persian wheel before? No?
What? I don't understand.
Oh, okay, okay. Let me explain this to you.
Uh,
It's a very easy process. Uh, I will explain you. Very easy. It's very easy. Uh, can you please? You're lacking, beta. Your voice is lacking.
I didn't understand what you said.
Your voice is uh,
Oh, I
mhm, unable to hear. Okay, let me read the chat. I'm just about to start. All right. Are you able to hear me now? Able to hear me now? All right. Let me see if you can hear me. Okay, perfect, perfect. All right. So I'm going to explain you Persian wheel. Now, as the method's name suggests, Persian wheel, what is a Persian wheel? So this is a wheel, right? So you have a wheel right here. This is called a horizontal wheel. This is a horizontal wheel. Now this horizontal wheel, from the center of this horizontal wheel, there goes a shaft. This is what? This is your shaft. It could either be a metal shaft or it could either be a wooden shaft. And it goes and it is connected to a wheel that looks like this. So it's a vertical wheel, right? It's a vertical wheel. So it's a vertical wheel. Now, and from this wheel, this horizontal wheel is also connected with a rope, right? To an animal, to an animal. Now this animal moves around this wheel. As soon as the animal moves around this wheel, this causes the horizontal wheel to move. And since this horizontal wheel is connected to this vertical wheel, the vertical wheel also spins. And this vertical wheel is over the source of water. And on this vertical wheel, there are buckets attached. As soon as this vertical wheel spins, the buckets collect water from the water body. And from towards the right of this wheel, there is a sort of a tray or a canal that collects the water and leads to the field. Now let me explain you this once again using this diagram. All right. So if you see this, this is a horizontal wheel. This is a horizontal wheel. And this horizontal wheel is connected with a shaft. Now, this is a wooden shaft, right? And this wooden shaft, sometimes there is a shaft or sometimes there is a, let me just write it here. Sometimes it is a shaft or it is a rope. And since the picture is not, the picture is just a bit edited, so this rope is connected to an animal. Let me draw an animal right here. It's connected to an animal, right? And as soon as this animal moves, this animal will move, right, across this. So it will cause this horizontal wheel to spin. And this horizontal wheel is connected to this vertical wheel. Since this horizontal wheel is moving, ultimately this vertical wheel will also move. And as you can see that there are buckets attached to this vertical wheel. As soon as this vertical wheel will move, it will collect water. The water is collected. And as you can see, the collected water will be collected in a canal. And that canal will lead to the field. Are you able to get a sense of it?
Yes, I understand. Like, I get what you're saying.
All right, all right. So this is one of the methods that is used. It's one of the traditional methods, right? All right. So again, a limitation of this method is that it requires what? It requires animal power, right? And when your animals get tired, you would also need to give them rest, or replace them. Does that make sense? Are we clear on
Yep,
this?
it makes sense.
All right, all right. So
Yep,
if you get
I've
time,
actually seen these videos before, so I understand it.
have you seen it?
Yep.
All right, great, great. Of course, that is something I was gonna suggest to you, that if you get a chance, YouTube Persian wheel, and then you're gonna see how the Persian wheel is used, particularly in Sindh. It is extensively used, but it's also used in KPK. All right, sounds good. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so
No, I saw in real life this man in my village, he has one.
who has one?
There's a man in my village, like back
Right.
home.
What's the name of your
So
village?
when we visited, we went to his house. It's called the village of mushrooms, Karede.
All right. And in which district is it located?
Karede. It's
All
in KPK over here.
KPK, right, 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 of course. Right, of course. So yeah, so see, you were
Mhm.
able to relate that, right? Of course, absolutely. Okay, so
Yep.
tank irrigation, these are just simple methods. I will just go through over them, right? In an Yes, before. Okay, so we are left with two traditional methods. I'm gonna go through them. Tank irrigation, right? So tank irrigation, what is tank irrigation? Let me give you. So see, what features can you see from the diagram, right? What you can see on the diagram? Tell me. So is it an open space or not? It's an open space, right?
The diagram's loading. Wait.
It's an open space, right?
Right.
So it will be subject to sun rays, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Before we dive further into this, now let me explain you what is going on in this diagram. So as you can see that it's a sort of a round space that has got some solidified boundaries. Perhaps the boundaries are solidified by mud, not perhaps, for sure, right? And this space is created by people, right? So what is tank irrigation? Tank irrigation is a man-made reservoir, right? What people do
Right.
is that, suppose you have a land, now people are gonna dig into this land, they are gonna create a space like this, they are gonna solidify the sideline, the boundaries, right, to avoid water loss or water leakage. And then when the rain comes, the water is gonna get collected into this reservoir. So tank
Right.
irrigation is basically, in simple words, it's a man-made reservoir, and
Mm-hmm.
it collects basically water that is obtained through rainfall. It saves rainfall water. Does that make sense? And when the water is collected, you can see
Yep.
there's a lot of water. Now, once the water is collected, people draw canals from it. People draw canals from it. Does that make sense?
Canal. Right.
Right? So again, and what are some of the limitations? The first limitation is that it occupies large area. So okay, now let me see, how are you going to develop this point? If I may ask you to develop this point, how are you going to do that?
Mm.
It occupies large area, so less.
To develop. Mhm.
Yes, so you're going
Okay.
to say that less land available for agriculture, yes or no?
Yeah.
Now you can see this space is used for water saving, conservation, right? So less land is available for, and of course, as I told you that since it's in its open sky, the water will be subject to evaporation. So are we clear with on this method, tank irrigation?
Mm. Yep.
All right. Last traditional or method, it's called inundation canals, right? It's called what? It's called inundation. We did the Persian wheel. Oh yeah, we did. All right. So it's called inundation canal. It's the last
Canal.
traditional method. Now, it's very simple. So these are the canals, right? You can see a canal is basically a passage through which the water passes and reaches the land, right? So what is a canal? Canal is a
Mm.
passage through which your water passes and reaches the field. Now, see, since this canal, so my question for you is that where is the water for this canal coming from?
From the rivers.
Yes. So inundation canals are long canals that are taken from rivers, right? Now, okay, it is understandable that they are taken from rivers. Can you please name rivers of Pakistan?
Like the Panchnath rivers.
Yes, yes, yes. Ravi, Satluj.
Okay, sure. Ravi, Satluj. Um, wait, give me a second. I need to remember. I actually know them.
Mhm. It's
The
Jhelum,
wait,
Chenab, right?
uh, I remember them. But I keep on forgetting. Yeah,
All right, all
Chenab,
right.
Panchnath,
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Sanskrit. No, not Sanskrit. What was it called? That came. That's in India.
Sorry.
Jhelum, Ravi, Satluj, Satluj,
Yes, yes. Indus.
and Chenab. You said it. Yeah, the Indus River.
Yes, so we have basically we're gonna study five
At
rivers, right? We are gonna study
mm,
them later on in this chapter for sure. Okay, so inundation canals are long canals that are taken from rivers. It means that these canals are only gonna supply water when the river is flooded. They are only gonna supply water when the river is flooded. It means if there is no
like, mm,
flood in the river, if and by flooded I mean, when are the rivers flooded? In the season of monsoon, right? It's from June, July season, right?
right.
So these rivers, when these rivers are flooded, the water flow in the canals is high and the farmer happily gets the water, right? So this method is called inundation canals. So these are long canals which are taken from large rivers. And let me tell you an interesting thing. Uh, when we're gonna start with the modern methods, the first method that we are gonna cover is called
Mm-hmm.
perennial canals, right? Perennial canals. And the only difference between
Right.
inundation canals and perennial canals, as the name suggests, that both of them are canals, so technically the mechanism is the same, right? It's a passage. The only difference between both of them is that inundation canals are taken from rivers and only work when the river is flooded. But the perennial canals are taken from dams and water reservoirs. So these canals, inundation canals, only provide water when the river is flooded. But these perennial canals provide water throughout the year. Does that make sense? These are taken from dams and barrages. Are we clear on that? All right. Does that make sense to you? Do you have any questions? All right.
No, no questions.
Okay, okay. So are you are we are clear on this, right? So tomorrow we'll continue with this, right? With water resources. When do you intend to appear for your CI? It's May June 23.
Probably next year. I'm not giving it right now.
Yeah, but in which series?
Uh, Sorry, I don't understand.
Okay, so I'm asking that when do you intend to appear for your CIE? Let me type it. Let me type it.
For CIE, probably